couple of key objectives that we want to make sure that come across today, and really what we'll be talking about. Three main elements with a focus on digital marketing campaigns. I want to make sure that we're kind of rooted in that understanding and foundation to start. But what we're really trying to focus on here is encouraging you all to think about AI and leverage AI in some aspect of your MarTech and campaign creation process. So that's number one. Number two is demonstrate how Braze can support an AI-supported campaign process for generally available features that Braze customers and folks that we're working with are using today. And then number three is explain how some other marketing teams are really benefiting from a combination of AI and automation to help make their campaign process more efficient and more effective. So we'll go through those three main things. As you all have questions, feel free to throw them into the chat. I'll try to answer them as they come in, as I see them. Otherwise, we'll have some time at the end where we can go through some of those questions as well. To start, my name is Bobby Tichy. I'm a solution lead. I'm here at Stitch. I lead our solutions team. So I'm responsible for thinking through a lot of what marketers are doing today with technology. How could they be doing it better, and how could they be doing it more efficient? I've spent my entire career in marketing technology across Salesforce, Marketo and Adobe, Braze and Segment. And I've worked with a lot of really fun, cool brands over the years, some of them smaller, mid-size, as well as enterprise, like Disney and AT&T. I live in Fernandina Beach, Florida, with my wife, Joni, and our 3 dachshunds. So if any of you have dachshunds out there, throw in a picture in the chat. It'd be great to see him, and I'll throw a picture up here of our 3 at the end as well. So I wanted to start with a poll, and really the thought here is AI is a big hot topic for everybody right now. So in the Zoom poll, I want to think through who has implemented AI at some level within their marketing team or tech stack. And there are a couple of key things to think through here is one, are you using AI? Are you thinking about using AI? You don't use it, but you're starting to put it onto your roadmap. And then lastly, you're definitely afraid of it and you haven't made a whole lot of plans to use it. And the reason why I wanted to start here is thinking through what the process looks like for marketers to adopt new technology or new processes. And I think the main thing that we're seeing across a number of our different customers and in my years of experience working with marketers and marketing technologists is that a lot of times we can be resistant to change, and especially on something that we don't quite understand. And the way I like to think about this is that a lot of us have gone through this marketing technology landscape, and there have been some leaders, there have been some laggards, but for the most part, a large portion of us, if you think about a bell curve, that kind of 80% in the middle, are functioning and doing the same things, right? We're using a marketing automation platform. We may or may not have a CDP, but we're doing email marketing. We're doing some semblance of mobile marketing, depending on the industry and company that we're working for. But one thing that's really interesting is I found that over time, marketers do a little bit of Milton from Office Space, where they're very protective of the tools that they've used or they are using, as well as the processes as part of that. So a good way of thinking about that is someone who's been in Salesforce Marketing Cloud for their entire career is going to be very protective over that platform. Or someone who is developing emails from a Photoshop design into HTML and CSS every time is going to be very protective of that. And what I really want to challenge all of us to think through is how can we make these processes better? How can we look outside of what we're currently doing to try to make things more efficient and more effective? And so as part of that, I'd like to take a little trip down memory lane. So for those of you who are Golden Girls fans, you'll recognize the picture of Sophia Petrillo. So Sophia Petrillo was the matriarch of the Golden Girls family and show. And so anytime that she wanted to tell a story, she started it out with picture it. So it would be picture it, Sicily, 1923. A young peasant girl was married to the Prince of England or something like that. So let's go down that path for just a minute. So picture it, Indianapolis, Indiana, 2011. let me tell you guys about a young man, an innovative software company, and a dream. And the whole thought here is that, like I said earlier, as marketers and sometimes as technologists, we're resistant to change. We think we have a process down or we've done something before, and we think that's the best way of doing it, and it couldn't get any better. So this young man at this innovative software company was working with First Midwest Bank. First Midwest Bank was a regional bank. I think they're still around, headquartered in Illinois. And they sponsored an amphitheater at a capacity of 28,000 people. And they would have concerts, comedians, all types of different shows. And so First Midwest Bank was really ahead of its time. They wanted to do an SMS sweepstake for concert goers. And again, this was 2011. This is 12 years ago. And so what they wanted to do was, as you were coming into the venue at the amphitheater, they wanted you to text in. So a very natural way of doing some kind of subscriber opt-in or customer acquisition. So that way you went into a sweepstakes for a VIP experience. So you would text in as you're coming into the concert, and you would have the opportunity to be one of 10 people that could sit in the first 3 rows, meet the band afterwards, and have free food and drinks for the entire concert. So it's a pretty sweet setup. And so they wanted to create an automated process to do this. And so they were leveraging Salesforce Marketing Cloud or ExactTarget at the time. And so as part of that process, what we did was we built this process where you text in, it sits in a table, and it's the process of selecting 10 random people is done and automated. So as part of this whole process, this young man's building this out, and as part of the testing and QA process for this particular campaign for the sweepstakes, the engineering team came in and said, hey, we've got this whole new process for testing and QAing audiences. So that way, whether it's a SMS or an email or whatever type of messaging it might be, we can ensure that it's not going to more people than we expect, and it's actually going to the people that we expect it to go to. Well, this young man was like, I got this figured out. I'll do my own manual testing and QA. I've got a process for it, my Excel document. So I'll just go down that route. Well, long story short, it went horribly wrong. So that young man was me. The innovative software company I already mentioned was ExactTarget, and I cost them over $50,000. So that leadership team had to write a check to First Midwest Bank for $50,000. Thankfully, I didn't get fired, but I learned a really valuable story. And you're probably wondering why I'm telling the story. And it's because as marketers, and like I said earlier, sometimes as technologists, whether it's testing or automation or innovation or AI, we don't always do a great job of adopting new technologies or processes. And not only that story is proof, but I want to give you some more proof. So going back to that time of 2011, we have what the batch campaign process looks like. Again, for the purposes of this webinar and for the tactics and processes we're going to talk through, thinking through digital marketing campaigns. So I initiate the campaign. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but many of you already know what this process looks like, right? We come up with a strategy. We decide who the audience should be, what the campaign assets should be. We have an agency or some in-house creative folks build out the copy and the content, all those different things. Then we have an agency or some in-house folks develop that from a PSD design into a HTML and CSS. We QA it. Maybe there's multiple versions that we need to create, and then we deploy it. And then we review it and optimize it. So pretty standard process, right? This is what that looked like in 2011. So now on this next slide, I'd like to challenge you to identify what's different about that campaign process today. And if you can't spot any differences, that's because there aren't any. And this is obviously not a rule of thumb, but it's the majority based on what we're seeing day to day, working with companies that have revenue of 100 million, 500 million, or 5 billion. It's consistent across many of these different industries and these different companies. And it's really interesting because as we start to look through the future and as we start to think about how AI and automation can help with these things, we really kind of have to start thinking about the campaign process completely differently. And that doesn't mean that the four key steps here of initiating a campaign, creating assets, QAing, and deploying is going to change, because for the most part, that will likely stay the same in some semblance as we continue to move forward. But as we think about today, where marketers are spending most of their time identifying the strategies, identifying the content, coming up with an audience, coming up with a send time, coming up with a send channel, we're really focused more on the tactical elements, much more so than the strategies. And that's where we really think that AI and automation can help. Because if AI and automation can help take out a lot of the repetitive work, we can focus more on strategic work. And so that's where you really see the tomorrow piece of it. And you can see there that both of these renderings were done by Dolly, and our director of marketing, Bree, does not approve. She graded it as C-. But as we think about marketers today, right, the challenges, just like the campaign process, are not all that different from 12 years ago. Technology might be a little bit better. Things might be a little bit more automated. But really today, we're faced with the challenges of a lack of time and resources, relying on one-off or batch and blast campaigns that have to be created from scratch each and every time. And we're spending a lot of money on things like creative and development and deployment, where we could be trying to find areas of efficiency. So how do we get to the future of marketing, which is less manual work? We're not just throwing things at the wall to see if they stick, and more of a focus on brand strategy and experiential marketing. And we'll talk more about what that means, and not just broad terms. And that's one thing where I also want to call out here is I hear a lot of folks talking about AI and automation and how that's going to change jobs and what that might look like. And I feel very strongly about the fact that as marketers, we're not going to be replaced by AI. We'll be replaced by marketers who use AI to be able to find automation and efficiencies in repetitive tasks. And that's where, to my earlier point at the beginning, is no matter where you are on the maturity curve, whether you're a $100 million company or a $1 billion company, or you have 3 people in your marketing department or 30 people in your marketing department, you can start using AI today. And so what does that look like? How do we get there? So if we go back to this batch campaign process today, right, the slide that we just walked through, this is the current state, or what campaigns look like today for most companies. Well, if we take a look at just what we can do today with Braze AI, there are 4 key components where AI can start helping us specifically within the Braze platform. Number 1 is with content copywriting with the AI copywriting assistant. So whether it's a subject line or the actual copy within a message, we can always do, or we can start to do that today with the AI copywriting assistant within Braze. The second piece is the Dolly 2 Braze image generator that's integrated into Braze. So that's another area where we can start leveraging that today and start testing with it. I think for some people, they think that all of a sudden all images are going to be generated by AI and all copy is going to be generated by AI. That's certainly not the case. But what we're seeing be really effective for folks is doing the first pass at that, especially for content or copywriting. So that way, I'm not trying to come up with brand new copy or content for every type of message I'm writing. I have a starting point. I have something that's giving me a draft that I can work from. The Braze image generator, what we've really seen be successful is people testing this or doing multivariate testing with images that are created from their content or design teams versus images that are generated from AI, but then approved by their content teams. The brand is still extremely important, and we're not saying or recommending that as a brand you start generating content with AI, but for different types of messaging or pieces of a message that are maybe brand agnostic, that's where we think there's some value and we can see some benefits and some efficiencies. The other elements there at the bottom are all powered by Braze's intelligent selection, intelligent channel, intelligent timing. This is all part of Braze's intelligence suite. So intelligent selection is really neat because what it's doing is within a journey, you have multiple swim lanes or multiple branches of that journey, and it is automatically selecting which which swim lane or which branch someone should go down based off of the performance of that particular variant. So for example, I've got 3 variants. I've got a 10% conversion rate, but 8% of my conversions are coming from branch one. So Braze's intelligent selection is going to automatically route people into branch one. The really cool thing is that this consistently updates over time. So the high performing branch of today may not be the high performing branch of tomorrow. So it's consistently seeing what has the highest conversion or engagement and then updating based off of that. The second is intelligent channel. So this is exactly what it sounds like. If I'm opted in to receive push notifications, SMS, and email and web pushes, where should you hit me? And then the last piece is intelligent timing. And that's where we're not only selecting the channel, but exactly when should I be deployed or have this message deployed to me for the highest possibility of conversion or engagement. So this is what we can accomplish today with Braze AI. And as we're thinking through what really future forward thinking marketing teams are doing is this batch campaign process, where many of these processes and steps are automated. And on the next slide, we'll walk through a sample diagram of what that looks like and where the differences between the marketer AI and MarTech is. But for this slide, what we're doing is the front part of that, the strategy is not changing. There's still a marketer, there's still a human element to it because there's so many things that as a brand, I've got to identify, what am I trying to accomplish? How do I want that to come across? And then what are the KPIs that are part of that? It's not always a conversion, right? It could be engagement. It could be a particular action that we want people to take, not just a purchase. So the next portion of that, the next big branch of the campaign process is creating campaign assets. And what we're seeing here is where folks are leveraging some kind of automation or some kind of content management to have a treasure trove or a library of campaign assets, and then automatically selecting what pieces of content are being driven for that particular campaign. So here's an example. Let's say that I am Papa John's, and as Papa John's, I have a new pizza coming out. It's an ultimate pepperoni pizza. So I want to drive awareness for this new ultimate pepperoni pizza. As part of that initial campaign, I'm going to set what that strategy is, right? It's awareness. We want people to buy this new pizza that we have rolling out. As part of that, for the website, for mobile messaging, for email, whatever it might be, the content team or the agency that they work with is going to have to generate this content, right? They're going to have to create, take photos or create imagery for the ultimate pepperoni. Maybe there's a whiteout of the pepperoni pizza, the whole thing. Maybe they're zoomed into how many pepperonis are on that pizza, all these different things, right? And you can equate that to whatever business or industry you might be in. So all of that content lives somewhere. Right now, that should live in a content management system or something similar. So that way, as we're building out campaigns, we have a place where we can go pull that content. So the first email or the first mobile message or the first web push might have the wide shot of the pizza. But what we're seeing a lot of companies do and helping companies to implement is then based off of how that particular campaign or message performs, how do we then optimize that automatically rather than taking weeks to identify what's statistically significant and then making those updates manually. So here's an example. I launched my Ultimate Pepperoni awareness campaign, the first one. And then 2 weeks later, we're automatically seeing how it performed based on some kind of a baseline that we promoted. And then we're automatically making adjustments to it based on that KPI. So maybe our goal was a 8% conversion, which means someone actually buying that ultimate pepperoni pizza. Well, if we're at 6%, what we could do is we could reach out to that CMS and say, hey, well, let's try some new imagery to build that out. Or let's build out multiple branches and then bring in multiples of different imagery or different copy or different content. And you'll see at that next stage. So we're starting to automate. And that's a key differentiator here is automation versus AI. We're automating the process of bringing these campaign assets together and optimizing them in conjunction with AI to be able to write different content or copy, as well as figuring out what are the best days or best times or best channels to communicate with those folks. And the best example I think of this is this is an actual use case for a customer that we work with of what this process looks like end to end. So at the very beginning, again, that marketer focus, you can see the legend in the bottom right-hand corner. That generation of that campaign, the strategy of that campaign is not changing. It's still with the human. It's still with us. It's still with the marketer. But then once I actually create that strategy in the prompt and I build out, whether it's a campaign request form or anything like that, from there, we're using a lot of automation and AI to then generate those messages. So in this situation, this particular customer is using Airtable as their workflow management tool. So as a marketer, I come up with an idea of what I want to be able to distribute or my campaign. Going back to the Papa John's example, I want to send out an ultimate pepperoni campaign. I go into Airtable, I type in all of the different elements to it, and we can even get as advanced as different types of tones for what I want the subject line to be. We could do multiple versions. So we want to have 5 different versions with different tones, some subject lines with emojis, some emails with GIFs, whatever we want. We can set all of that at the Airtable level. From there, Airtable is then communicating with a number of systems to then generate the message. It's communicating with ChatGPT for the actual copy. And then Airtable is then communicating with Sitecore as the CMS to pull down that content that's related to that ultimate pepperoni campaign. And then Airtable, Sitecore, and Braze are all talking to each other, so that once we have the copy and we have the content, we're pushing into Braze to create the actual message. We also have movable ink as a key part of this as well, because if we're pushing out an offer, especially if it's something that's time boxed or event driven, we want to make sure that people see content that's relevant to them at the particular time that they're opening it. And then from there, the proofs are automatically being sent to the marketer. So this whole process, from the time that I decide what I want my campaign to be, I build out that campaign request form in Airtable, to getting proofs is a matter of hours, not days or weeks. And then from there, I can review what those proofs are and what that process looks like. I can build those campaigns are then built through that automation in Braze, whether it's a journey, a one-off campaign, or whatever it might look like. And then that campaign is now available to be able to send, but then it's also part of our reservoir. And what I mean by reservoir is, as we start to build out these campaigns, we have a catalog or a library of all these different campaigns that AI can then choose from as we start to optimize these campaigns. And a big portion of this, especially as we think about content, is building out what we think of as the lifecycle campaign process. And I don't mean building out a journey for this process. I mean building out the types of content that we want to share. This is a very simplistic view of what I'm talking about, but hopefully it provides context into how that content should be ideated and then tagged. So for example, we're in Sitecore and we're using the Papa John's example, but we're thinking about it in terms of onboarding. So we have these 4 different life cycle stages: inactive, lapsing, active, and loyal. I should have all of my content tagged based off of these different stages, as well as what the actual content is. So for example, a piece of content for the ultimate pepperoni might have, the context is ultimate pepperoni, but the life cycle stage is active. So that way we can quickly bring in these different pieces of content. And this is really where the future of campaigns and marketing technology is going, is it will not be the step-by-step process of building out a campaign. We'll be really focused on the strategies and then have a library or catalog of all these different campaigns that we could pull from at any one time to send to a subscriber or a customer or a user. So as we start thinking through that in the future and all these different things that we're doing today, and where a human and AI, or AI alone, will start to function, this is really a key that we put together to identify what that looks like. So you can see across these different ones, red for human, purple for human and AI, and then blue for AI. AI is not going to completely take over. And I think that's one other message we want to make sure that comes across as part of this. But there are enormous opportunities to use AI to do data analysis, to perform repetitive tasks, to optimize the campaigns that we're sending, and then leverage automation to bring these things together to make them faster and more efficient, as well as make things not only more efficient and more effective, but also foolproof things a little bit more, going back to my story of costing exact target $50,000. So I hope this was helpful in understanding where we're seeing AI and automation being leveraged in the campaign process, and also what the future looks like. If you're not sure where to start and you need some help in identifying what that looks like, we would love to help you. So go to this bit.ly or scan the QR code and fill out the form. And we'd love to jump on a call with you to understand what you're trying to accomplish, where you currently are in that digital maturity curve, and where we would recommend you implement some AI elements. It's not a paid engagement or a paid call or anything like that. We'd like to talk through that with you. We'll help you build out a roadmap to where you could use AI or automation in your MarTech stack or your process. And then if you, we'll help you build out a roadmap for that. If you're then interested in us helping you, we'd love to help. If not, you can use that internally to start leveraging and implementing some of those different things. So thank you all for joining. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to fill out the form or hit us up on LinkedIn. And we really appreciate you joining. Take care, everybody.